Hello, all you scaredy cats and kittens, and welcome to the Two Scaredy Cats podcast, where we talk about all things strange, unusual, and paranormal. We're your hostess with the mostest. I'm Stacy.
And I'm Kara.
So, Kara, it's been quite a while since we had our last podcast recording here, and that was kind of a little bit by accident. We kind of let the weeks get away from us. So what have you been up to recently besides wedding planning?
Lots of conventions.
And what was
lots of convention stuff and traveling.
Yep. The funnest convention you were at, or the one that you liked the most recently?
I don't know. They've all blurred together.
Got it.
I would say the wildest was Otakon. That was the one in DC I went to.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's
just because the last one I just worked I did like 15 photo shoots in one day.
That is a lot.
Which is a lot. Because, so, the Otherworld, you know Otherworld, we've been there.
Yeah.
So they did an Otherworld event, but it was on Saturday night, and I already booked the full day, and I was like, well, I know people are going to want photos at Otherworld. It was actually a whole thing, because they were supposed to have a bus for us to go from the hotel to the place, and then they would pay back and forth. So we were out there waiting, and the bus just never came, ever. Which was a whole thing. And apparently it was at the wrong place the entire time. And it didn't actually show up until midnight. And I had already been... And I had a shoot the next day at 9 a.m. And I was like, this is horrible. I actually me and my friend, we ended up Ubering because they were my first client. So I was like, well, let's get a head start because we thought the bus was delayed. We didn't realize it was just not coming. And then my other clients also ended up Ubering. So I only had to wait on one last person, because we were able to do all their shoots while I was waiting. And then when the bus finally arrived, the last person was on it. So we did their shoot, and then I was able to go home.
Oh, goodness.
But it was a whole thing. We got cool photos, but it was a...
Now, which convention was... This was at Ohio Con,
yes, it was... No, it's MetsuriCon, but it's Columbus.
Metsuri. Okay, MetsuriCon.
But it was the one in Columbus, so, I always book really crazy, because it's, my home con or whatever.
Right, okay, cool.
And I was trying to pay for the Vegas trip, so I was, taking on some extra stuff.
Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know, Otherworld is this really cool place located in Columbus that is an immersive art installation thing, and they have, all kinds of neat rooms.
Yeah.
With cool lights. So if you're have any kind epilepsy, you probably don't want to go there if you can't stand loud music and stuff like that, because it's very immersive. They have really neat, all the rooms are different themes. They have an alien theme, they have an 80s theme room, and they have Space Invaders and all kinds of cool stuff there. You should, if you ever get the chance and you're in Columbus, you should really go.
They just opened one in Philadelphia too, so if you're in there, and that
really?
The Otherworld 2 basically, but it's the one in Philadelphia. And there's one that basically the place that we're going to go to in Las Vegas is called Omega Mart, and we're pretty sure that Otherworld was based off of Omega Mart.
It makes sense.
So we're going to the OG when we go. Okay,
I've seen the Mega Mart thing. Me and Dad almost went to that when we were there, but we didn't have enough time.
Well, good thing, because we're going for the bachelorette party. Yeah, we're going to Vegas. It's going to be a time.
Oh yeah, we're going there for Kara's bachelorette party, so this will be an experience.
Oh yeah.
But hopefully we'll have some stories to tell when we come back.
So I'm sure we're going to have some insanity that happens.
I know. I'm sure.
It's Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Isn't that what they say?
That's what they say.
I think we should get some decorations for one night to set up in the room.
Yeah, I found some really cool ones that I'm thinking about getting.
Okay.
I'll let you know later. Yeah, that was kind of funny. I like them. I think you guys will like them too. But anyway. All right, so I guess we should get started since it's been a hot minute since we've had one of these little sessions. So I guess Kara's first this week. So I'll let her go ahead and take it away and tell us what she's going to do this week.
Yeah, so we have a really actually interesting story. I had heard this a while ago, and it's one of those things that lives in my head rent free, what actually happened. It's kind of true crime-ish, but there's definitely some weird elements where it doesn't make sense, or you could see it be like paranormal-y, or
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely some cult, like a speculation.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to be talking about who put Bella in the Wych Elm. So
never
in
heard of
19 yeah, this is like kind of I've never heard of this before, but I randomly, like, one podcast forever ago, I heard someone talk about it. I was like, we can't not talk about it because it's a pretty crazy story. So this has actually happened around World War II in 1943 on April 18th in Worcestershire, England. Don't hate me for my pronunciation. We know that's a
yeah. Please don't come after us because we're
Worcestershire. I don't know. England. 4 young boys: Robert Hart, Bob Farmer, Thomas Willits, and Fred Payne. They were in the Hogley Wood, looking for bird nests to find eggs, because this was like, food was very scarce right around this time, so this was like a thing people would do to try and find any kind of food. So they were trying to find eggs, and they came across this large wych elm tree, which I looked it up, and these trees look pretty wild and kind of just spooky already. They believed it would be perfect to find a bird's nest in, because it was hollow on the inside. So they, one of the boys climbed up to get a better look inside, and he noticed a skull, which initially they're like, oh, it's probably like an animal skull, because that's what you would think. So they pulled it out, and they realized there was hair on it, the tufts of hair, and it was a human skull. So they were freaked out, and they put it back in the tree, because they were like, they were actually on land. They were technically trespassing on this part of the forest area they were in. So they were like, we don't want to get in trouble for this. So they ended up swearing like, oh, no one tell what happened. And then they all went home, but one of the oldest boys actually felt kind of uneasy about the whole situation, and he ended up coming to his parents and telling them what they found. So the father went to the police and told them, like, hey, and then one of the boys actually brought them back to the tree, and when they found the tree, they actually discovered a complete skeleton inside of the tree.
Oh my
Not
goodness.
just a
That's
skull.
Scary. Right. Ooh.
Which is crazy, like, how it was inside of this tree.
Right. How did it get in there is my question, yeah.
That's kind of the mystery of it all. So
because when they were alive, they would have been like bigger than this. You know what I mean? Like that would have been really hard to smush them in there.
Oh yeah, we're going to be talking about that, because there's like people who speculated on like how did this person get into the tree, because we don't really know.
Wait, were all the bones whole, or had they been chopped up?
No, they were. So okay, here's what we're actually going to talk about that.
Okay,
so the body was mostly intact, except a hand was missing. But they found what they believed was like remains of a hand farther away from the initial tree. Where they found the
like
body.
An animal or something got a hold of it, they think, or do they think something else?
I don't know. There's more in the theory section. People have a theory about the hand.
Okay.
It's kind of a wild thing. So after they did like an autopsy, I mean, you have to remember this is 1940s,
right? They didn't have a lot of.
They really didn't have as much as they would, because like I feel like with a hair sample, they probably would have been able to get like a lot better nowadays.
Oh yeah, they could have easily identified her quickly with the DNA and all that.
So they were able to realize that she had been dead for 18 months, placing her death around October in 1941. And they discovered that they believed that asphyxiation was the cause of death because of what they found. The person who did the thing said it was impossible to get her inside after rigor mortis had set in, so she had to have been placed in the tree immediately after death. Because by rigor, there would be no way to put her in there. Right. And they also did not believe that a person could get into the tree voluntarily. Like they ruled out suicide as one of the options. It was also hard to identify the body because so many people had reported missing around this time, because this was around the Second World War. So there was already a lot of people missing. Right. But when they did, because there were some objects that kind of like helped, but there were no people that seemed to match the evidence. And then this is where we get the name of our story. In 1944, a mysterious graffiti appeared on a wall in Birmingham that stated, "Who put Bella down the Wych Elm?" So someone wrote that because there was no, like, no one knew what the name of her is.
Right. So somebody knows
So
something.
this kind of piqued the
Right.
interest of the police, because this was the first lead they had other than what they had found around the body.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and because of the location of the graffiti, because people were like, oh, it probably was, like, kids messing. But it was very high up on, like, the wall, so people were like, maybe it wasn't kids. So the police was actually kind of like, ooh, what is this? And they did look into it, but they couldn't find anyone that matched the name of Bella, even, like, with that info. And there's actually, people still continue to write that in that area. Like, every, like few years, someone else will write that in, like, other areas around that location of where she, but they did find out it was a female body, too, so we do know that at least.
Okay.
So it is a female body, other than that. They did
and
find,
they still don't know to this day who she is?
No. It's a mystery today.
That's
Here's
sad.
The interesting theories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of crazy, especially when you look at, like, the position she was in the tree. Like, they had to have put serious work into putting this person into a tree. Like, Can you imagine trying to shove, like, a dead body into a tree like that?
No.
Like, you should look up what the tree looks like, because it looks pretty, like, crazy already. Especially this, like, it looks very, like, I don't know, odd.
Like it's gonna come to life?
Yeah, maybe. So, Margaret Murray came forward in 1945, and she had believed that it had something to do with witchcraft.
I could see that.
Because of the hand missing, she believed it was a ritual called the Hand of Glory, believing she could have been sacrificed, believing it was devil worshippers, basically. That was kind of their whole thing. But that's why it was interesting that the hand was missing, because people were like, oh, maybe it's associated with this.
Right.
And there was also, people say you could trap a witch's spirit inside of a hollow tree.
I've never heard that, but okay.
I never heard that either, but that's what I found. People, speculation.
Right.
And then there was one theory about a German spy kind of a thing. Because, like, this was around World War II.
Because Germany was invading England during World War II. Yeah.
So that was another theory, was maybe it was a spy, that's why no one knows anything about them, and maybe she saw something she wasn't supposed to know, and they put her in the tree. And then another theory, there was, in 1944, a Birmingham sex worker stated that another sex worker called Bella went missing 3 years ago, and she worked on Hagley Road, which was near this area.
Okay. Huh.
But yeah,
interesting.
That is the interesting story of Bella in the Wych Elm. But we don't know who put Bella in there.
Yeah, we still don't know to this day. Huh.
Isn't that a crazy story? I'd, like, never heard of
Are they
before.
still trying to figure out, though, who put
Oh, yeah, it's one of those things that a lot of people are still kind of, like, looking into.
I'm surprised
it
with
kind
all
of
the
gets
true
popular.
crime people today that they couldn't
figure it out. Like, I found it on a true crime, but, like, I hadn't seen too many people talk about it. Because, like, some cases they'll be, like, all over.
Super popular,
but I saw, like, a mystery kind of, because there's no, like, definite way. And the, like, how the body got in the tree is very unusual, too.
Yeah, that is kind of strange.
Like, it's inside of a tree. Like, why'd they put her in the tree? There's just so many questions of what happened. Other than, like, crazy. She... Yeah.
Huh.
What do you have for us today?
Well, today I have the story of Louiza Fox, who lived in Egypt, Ohio. And this is like her story of how she ended up dead and some of the things that happened today since her death. So, our story starts in 1896 in a small farming village of Egypt, Ohio. A 13-year-old housemaid named Louisa Catherine Fox was murdered by a 22-year-old miner named Thomas Carr. He was a member of the Union Army during the Civil War. He had a history of violence and would fight with his own Union soldiers, and he had actually been shot several times by the Union soldiers as punishment for him fighting with other soldiers. The story goes that Louisa lived nearby with her family in a small farming, on a small farm near Swellsville, Ohio. She worked as a server for the family of Alex Hunter, who was the owner of a local coal mine in the area. Though Louisa was only 13 years old, she was courted by 22-year-old Thomas Carr of Sugar Hill, West Virginia. After fighting in the Civil War, he had gotten this job in Hunter's mine, and he had took an interest in Louisa, and he would like pester her and follow her everywhere, and it was really kind of creepy, to the point of she did not like him making these advances at her. She told her family, I don't like him, he keeps following me around and all that. But after, her family found out that he was interested in becoming engaged to her, her parents initially approved of this engagement. But, however, the young couple's age difference started not to sit so well with Louisa's parents and the guy that owned the mine. So, because of Carr's past history of violence, and he had been incarcerated at one point, and this all came to light to them. So, Louisa's parents and employer objected to the wedding and called it off and said Carr could marry her when she turned, in 3 years, when she would be of age. She would have been 16 at that point. So, Carr was not happy with this decision. He was not happy that they wanted him to wait 3 years to marry her. So, the next day, he approached Louisa, who had been with her little brother, Willie, who was 6 years old at the time. Willie had picked her up from her work where she worked at. You remember she worked at the home of Alex Hunter. And the Hunters had told her, no, we want you to wait because of, the way Carr had been acting. He'd been acting strange that day. They're like, no, we want you to wait. We'll take you home on horseback back to your home. But she didn't want to wait, and her brother came to pick her up. And so she thought they would be fine. So her and her brother took off walking. And while they were walking, Carr came up to them and told Willie that he wanted to talk to Louisa in private. So the brother left and kind of, went up a hill, a little ways away from them. And Carr kissed Louisa. He pulled out a razor and slashed her throat. So as she, God. So as she's like bleeding to death on the ground, okay, he continues to stab her 14 more times on top of,
in the chest?
Yes, after he already, basically beheaded her. So, yeah, I mean, this dude was, crazy. So, Willie witnessed his sister basically dying, okay? And at this point, he goes and he runs to tell his parents what's going on. So, the parents go, okay, well, Carr, while all this is going on, is, running away and trying to hide from everybody because he knows they're all coming after him. So he hides in this, old coal bunker, okay? And when he's in there, he tries to slash his own throat to kill himself. Well, the idiot didn't do it right, and he managed to fail at that. So when he fails to do that, he then tries to shoot himself, okay? Well, that didn't work out for him so well either. So he ends up surviving that too and has some injuries. So, I'm just thinking karma, buddy. Karma is coming back to get him, and it's getting him bad. So she was murdered on January 21st, 1969 by him. Now, the interesting thing about this case was that Carr was sentenced to death in a very highly publicized case because he not only confessed to killing her, but he also confessed to killing 14 other people.
Oh my God.
And
that's a lot of people.
So this... Yeah, I know. So this basically makes him one of America's first serial killers. So Carr had a public hanging, and this was the first and only legal execution carried out in Belmont County, which is in Ohio. According to local legends, Fox's ghost still wanders the areas of Egypt Valley because she was unable to move on from such a horrific death. People say that they have seen a ghostly girl roaming the countryside, or she can be seen crying by her gravesite. If you want to try and catch a glimpse of this ghostly apparition, You can start on Stark Road next to there's a small stone marker in the spot where she was murdered. There is a tree planted next to where she was killed, and then there's like a little marker there explaining what happened. And so you can do that. And there's also apparently a ghostly legends and lore trail that you can take in Belmont County that takes you to all like the spot where she died. It can take you to where the cemetery is where she's buried, and we'll talk about that in a second here. There's also a old mortuary that is supposedly haunted, and there's a couple of other and apparently there's some hellhounds and Bigfoot has been spotted in this area. So there's also another story that has to do with the cemetery where she was buried of a back in the mining days. There was a truck driver that had fallen asleep at the wheel of the truck that he was driving, and he had an accident and his truck was flipped over on top of itself. And some people say that he was killed when the truck turned over, but others say that he was still alive. But everybody says that his arm had been cut off in the accident, okay? So it is said that his arm now crawls around the cemetery in Salem Cemetery by its fingertips, and it will tap, tap, tap on the graves. Now, and if that's not scary enough for you, there's supposedly a pack of hellhounds that will roam around this cemetery and in the area of where this Egypt Valley is. And people say they can see their eyes gleaming at night. Nobody will go on this area at night because they say they feel like they're being watched, and they've heard like growls and snarls, and they've seen these, glowing red eyes from the hellhounds. So that is what I have about this area. It is called this is all in Belmont County. And and that's not too far away, by the way. I looked it up. It's like an hour away from both of us. So I'm thinking we might have to do a little field trip out there one of these days to check some of this stuff out to see if it's really true or not. But that's all I have this week.
It's going to be an extra short podcast today.
Yep, it is. So, anyway.
Well, if you enjoyed our podcast today, follow us on Instagram at Two Scaredy Cats Podcast, and please be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps the show get discovered. And tune in 2 weeks for a new episode. And to all our scaredy cats and kittens out there, remember, curiosity didn't kill these two scaredy cats.